Give me a little intro there, Gomer.
There's no turning back now.
Let's put on the show.
Time to play the music. It's time to light the lights. It's time to meet the hosts of the Station 71 podcast tonight. My name is Mario, and this week I'm joined by my co-hosts,
Beth
and Brian.
So, we have an awesome show lined up for you guys this week. But as always, let's get some of these quick fire news articles out of the way before we dive into some fun stuff. So, this week, the Christmas tree trail has opened at Disney Springs. Super exciting. We are now in the Christmas season for Disney.
Which starts November 1st.
Yeah, that's a little weird to say. But it's very exciting. I'm super happy that the Christmas tree trail is back open again. I didn't get to see it the last couple of years it's been there, but I'm hoping that I can get down there to see it eventually.
Mm-hmm.
Same. These are really cool, though. I like that they have so many different ones.
Mm-hmm.
There's one for, like, every princess, pretty much, which is kind of cool. And, like, the attraction ones are really cool.
I know in the last couple of years, it's been pretty large, and they've had a lot of, like, a lot of trees inspired by different properties that Disney owns, too. Like, the Muppets had one the first year they did it. And, like you said, almost every princess has their own tree, too. So it's really cool. I like that Disney does stuff like this to kind of add a little bit extra to the holidays.
I really want to see this Haunted Mansion one.
Yeah, that one looks super cool. I think it's nice that they're doing this in a setting where people don't have to pay, though. Since it's at Springs, it's free, right?
Yeah, essentially, that's the best part of all of this, is that it's free in Disney Springs.
Yeah, so it's like a nice, like, non-park day activity.
So, the next article we have up is that Maleficent, the steampunk-inspired dragon float for Festival of Fantasy, is set to return. It seems that apparently Maleficent has been seen testing for the parade return. If you guys don't remember, May of this year, there was an incident where Maleficent caught on fire, and we have not seen her in Festival of Fantasy since. So this is exciting. Personally, I can't see them ever running Festival of Fantasy without Maleficent, even though they've been doing it for the last couple months.
No, it's the finale, and it's not there anymore.
Yeah, I was shocked. Like, when I read this article, I didn't realize that. I had just assumed that the float was still in the parade. It just wasn't doing the fire effect. But I don't know. How do you take, like, the key float out of this parade? I can't imagine seeing it and not seeing that float.
I know, it would be like removing it from Fantasmic.
Yeah.
I'm curious to see if it's still going to be breathing fire when it comes back, though.
I would hope so. That's got to be like the biggest thing about this float, is that it breathes fire.
True, but could you imagine if it caught on fire again after this?
Oh no.
Mm-hmm.
That would be the end of Festival of Fantasy.
I think so. And probably any pyrotechnics in a Disney parade ever again.
That's very true.
But it ran for, like, 4 years almost?
It ran for a while.
And that was the first time that it, like, seriously caught fire. So maybe they just tweaked a couple things and they'll have another good 4 years.
Hopefully.
By then it'll be time for a new parade.
So last news topic we have for this week is that the Disney streaming service has finally gotten a name, and it's going to feature some unexpected things. Originally, I put that this was going to feature a Loki series and a second Star Wars series, in addition to the Mandalorian series that was announced. But upon further inspection, Beth noted that we're going to be getting some new stories from Monsters, Inc. and High School Musical as well. This comes directly from the Walt Disney Company themselves, so I guess we'll see how this goes.
I find the High School Musical, like Monsters, Inc., I get it. Like, I would love to see more stories from that universe. But I'm like, did anyone ask for more High School Musical? Like, and this is coming from someone who is a really big High School Musical fan. I love the first one. I love the second one. The third one was meh. It's like, how did they even do that? They're just gonna have a completely new cast, and then is it even really a High School Musical anymore?
It's High School Musical: The Reunion.
Okay, I would be super into that. If they have like at least some of the original cast, that would be dope. But
the weird thing is it's been long enough for them to actually have a high school reunion.
Oh my gosh, that's true. Oh my gosh, has it been like, what, 10 or 12 years since the first one came out?
Man.
I think it came out in 2006. Maybe. Yeah, 2006 was the first one. It's been 12 years.
My, how the
Y'all.
time flies.
Oh,
Man, I literally watched it as it premiered on Disney Channel. I am old.
that's horrifying to think about because I remember when that came out too. Oh,
So, as far as the actual streaming service, is this something you think you guys are gonna actually get?
I definitely will.
I was in when they announced the last Star Wars series, like a new Star Wars series. I'm excited for them to explore different like avenues in the universes that they have available to them. I know you said earlier, we were talking off air about them maybe doing a Muppet show because that was rumored, and that would be like the final thing to tie me in. But I know I'm sold on this already.
Yeah, me too. It's, I have, like, the longer that time has gone on, I've gotten less and less prone to buying movies on Blu-ray because I know that if I just wait a little bit longer, they're going to come to a streaming service, which is what's been happening on Netflix, because, like, Moana came and then Coco came, but now it's just, like, everything is going to be in one place as far as, like, the Disney, which is usually all I buy on Blu-ray anyway. Plus, I'm a huge Loki fan, so that's exciting.
Mm-hmm.
And didn't they say there was going to be a Winter Soldier and Black Widow series as well?
It was, if I remember correctly, because I think it was very odd, it was Winter Soldier and the Falcon. It was like a very odd combo of characters.
Well, I'm a big Winter Soldier fan too, so they're not giving me much of a choice but to subscribe here.
Well, and here's the other thing that like really kills me is streaming services have been doing a lot better with their TV shows than actual TV has. Like the Marvel Netflix like universe is so good, and I'm pretty wrapped into that. So I think streaming right now is the way to go for that.
I think I'm interested to see how they're going to mesh it together. Like, are they going to take those shows like the Marvel Netflix series and like say, hey, we're buying these from you? Or are they going to be like, oh, those are dead now?
So
those are dead to us.
There's a pretty strong rumor that Netflix is wrapping all of them up because Luke Cage and Iron Fist both just got canned. Iron Fist really isn't that surprising because it wasn't that great, but Luke Cage got a lot of positive reviews even in its last season. So I think what they're probably going to end up doing is either wrapping up Jessica Jones and Daredevil and maybe moving them over there, or they're just going to wrap them up and pretend like they're in their own separate universe.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like Disney and Netflix aren't on very good terms right now anyway, so I could see Netflix just completely sitting on this and being like, no, you can't have them.
Yeah, which would be horrible. But, what that does do that's very odd is if Disney does bring them over, does that make them technically canon to the Marvel Cinematic Universe? Because they're already talking about doing a Loki with Tom Hiddleston, like, in the movie.
God, please.
Would that bring Daredevil, Jessica Jones, Iron Fist, all of those characters to the cinematic universe?
Please, someone, literally, like, so me and my boyfriend, is like our thing. Like, we watch every single, like, Marvel Netflix series that has come out. We watch every single episode together, and we've just been waiting and waiting, like, tie it into the MCU, tie it in. When are you going to tie it in? And it's like, tie it in already.
They should have a long time ago.
I want to know that these characters all exist in the same universe. So I hope that happens. I'm not going to, get my hopes too high, but...
That was just like a very in-the-moment thought that I just had. So take that for what it is.
Yeah.
Podcast
Oh my
world.
gosh. I would love to see those characters all together. It was so awesome to see, like, the Defenders bringing all of those together. Just, I don't know. I feel like if they just brought everybody together, it would just be, like, mind-blowing.
Yeah. I think Disney has so many characters with Marvel that they need to figure out what they're going to do with all of them first.
Well, there's only a few that are still alive.
That's true. Spoiler.
Everyone knows that a lot of people die at the end of Infinity War. We didn't say who.
That's true. So are you guys ready to dive into the topic of this week?
Very.
Okay, so if you couldn't tell by my intro, we are going to be talking about the Muppets this week. Very excited. We're going to be talking about the history of the Muppets in Walt Disney World, some of the projects that could have been, some of the things that are now, and kind of how Disney got a little involved with the Muppets themselves. So I'm super excited about this one. I am a huge Muppets fan, and I know at least Brian is too.
Definitely.
I'm not as big of Muppets fan as you guys, but I do love them.
So
I'm just not a fan because I'm not as knowledgeable, probably.
See, my thing with the Muppets, and I always kind of like say this, is I kind of grew up with them. Like, my mom had the Muppet show when she was younger, and then when I was younger, we had the Muppet movies and everything, and those were like the things I watched very heavily. Funny enough, one of my like first Walt Disney World memories is going to Muppet Vision 3D, going through the attraction with my parents and everything, and then when we left, we went through the gift shop and we bought the first season of the Muppet Show. And my dad brought a portable DVD player on the airplane, and I remember going back to the hotel room that night and watching like the entire first disc of the Muppet Show. I was going through this, and I had this weird like flashbulb memory, and I'm like, okay, why do I remember that? But yeah, so this is going to be a fun one.
Yeah, it's funny. Muppet Vision is also one of my earliest memories of Disney World. I remember being a kid watching it and just being like that, and Honey, I Shrunk the Audience. I was just like completely blown away. I was just like, well, how do they do this
Honey,
stuff?
I Shrunk the Audience is a very odd one to remember too.
I know, right? It's weird. I don't know. I remember the rats running under your feet.
Oh,
Do you guys know what I'm talking about?
Man, like, I remember that attraction. I remember going on it as a kid, but I can't remember anything from, like, the actual attraction.
Pretty much, I think the only really vivid memory I have of it is at the end. They have, like, I don't know, brushes that brush across the back of your legs to make it feel like rats are running under the seats. And as a 6-year-old, it was very traumatizing, but cool at the same time. I don't know.
I have a weird memory. This is like total tangent now. But I have this weird memory of being afraid of Sounds Dangerous too, for like very similar reasons.
I never did that.
I just remember it was dark, like the entire attraction, and it was all about obviously the sound, but it was just weird as a kid not being able to see what was going on around me.
Yeah.
So let's dive into some of this history lesson here. First thing I kind of wanted to go over is who are the Muppets, if you haven't heard of them or aren't familiar with them themselves. The Muppets were started in 1955, the same year as Disneyland, and they were created for a show called Sam and Friends by Jim Henson and his eventual wife, Jane Henson. They made appearances on Sesame Street as well. It's basically the characters of Kermit, Fozzie, Miss Piggy. I feel like they themselves have just the identity of the Muppets, and it's hard to explain if you don't actually know who they are. But they're most known for their meta-referential variety skit comedy style. It's they're very self-aware that they're in movies or TV shows, and most of their comedy comes from that. The original Muppet Show was a comedy sketch style thing, like Saturday Night Live, where they had guest hosts, and it was really awesome, and Muppets should do something like that because that is where they belong. But I'm not going to go on that tirade. But Muppets are marionettes and puppets, so it's the style of how they're built, and these characters have come to be known as the Muppets themselves.
Fun fact on this, I'm just going to throw in there real quick, is that if you look, a lot of the Muppets are quote unquote left-handed. They're doing a lot of the stuff they're left-handed, which is because the performer is using I'm sorry, let me get this right. Yeah, he's using his right hand to control the mouth, and usually his left hand with the the stick that controls the hand. So it makes all the puppets look like they're left-handed.
Surprisingly, that is
That's
a fact that I did not know. I mean, I've probably noticed it, but never actually picked up on that.
I gotta say, I feel a little dumb that I never put together marionette and puppet.
Well, it's weird because like a marionette is a style of puppet, so I guess you'd probably wouldn't think to put those two together, but that's where they get their name from.
Yeah, I guess I just never thought about it. Just like they've always been the Muppets.
Another fun fact, when Kermit first appeared in Sam and Friends, he didn't have that green frog collar thing that he's known for around his neck. He was just a green puppet, and people weren't sure if he was a frog or a lizard.
Huh. Okay.
It's funny because that thing doesn't make him look any more.
Does
It
that
doesn't.
distinguish it?
No, it really doesn't. But if you look at the earlier designs of Kermit, he looks totally different just because he doesn't have that thing around his neck.
That's so funny. It's yeah, let's add this weird collared spiky thing, and then people totally know it's a frog automatically.
It's funny, the thing that always dates the Muppets for me, when you look back, is how different Miss Piggy looked throughout the years. But I guess a lot of that too is probably she's always supposed to be the fashionable one, so I think she's trying to dress or have her hair done or the makeup or whatever is in style at the time. But it's very telling of how old the episode or the movie is. If you look at
that's
Miss Piggy.
very true. So the Muppets kind of found their home in Disney's Hollywood studios when they started becoming the Muppets, and they were on, they were doing the Muppet Show. Disney started to kind of want to get involved with it. And there was always kind of a discussion between the Disney company and Jim Henson to acquire the Muppets in some way. And funny enough, between Michael Eisner and Jim Henson, Jim Henson actually saw the Disney company as being able to run their properties and kind of understood that they knew the money aspect of things and wanted to take a step back from all of that and do more creative stuff. So he was kind of all in for going in with Disney, which I kind of found fascinating because, Disney's this big media conglomerate, and I feel like selling to them was something that not a lot of people were exactly there for.
I know, and especially if you have this creative property that you're so passionate about, which Jim Henson was, that has to be kind of scary to basically give, even if they say you're going to be able to retain creative authority and stuff, that's a scary proposition to go forward with.
Yeah, and that's the thing. So when they first were in talks about this, everything kind of happened with all of that over a long span of time. Michael Eisner started talking to Jim Henson and was like, "Hey, I want to buy the Muppets from you," and they started discussing the negotiation part of the deal. And Jim Henson was very much into the idea of working with Disney the same way that George Lucas did on a couple of the attractions for Hollywood studios. And he was very much, ready to kind of do those things without actually being in a contract with them, which is where we get a lot of this initial stuff before they actually sold to Disney. Now, the only thing that kind of held them up from fully selling to Disney, and this is really funny to me, is Sesame Street. So technically, the Henson Company only owns about 50% of Sesame Street. Everything else is, I think it's some public broadcasting network that I'm drawing a blank on. I think so. So 50% of it is owned by that company, and then 50% of it is owned by the Henson family. And Disney wanted their share in it, but because of that, they would only own 50%, and Michael Eisner really wasn't cool with that. So that's what kind of held them up on it for a while. But like I said, Jim Henson was very much like, I'm here for this. I want to do this park with you guys. He was actually there at opening day of Disney's Hollywood Studios and was fully like, you know, they had Kermit and Miss Piggy. They had all these different movie characters there for the opening day. And the first expansion for Disney's Hollywood Studios was actually supposed to be called Muppets Movie Land or Muppet Studios. Now, this is where the fun part of this comes in, because I think a lot of the cool stuff that we could have got from all of this deal is what we really should have gotten out of all of this, and it's a shame that we didn't. Originally, the first portion of this project was supposed to be a themed 3D attraction, which essentially is Muppet Vision. We pretty much got that exactly in the form that it was supposed to be. The other two chunks that were supposed to go along with this first phase were a Muppets live stage show, which as I was researching, it's very hard to find videos of these, but what you can find is very creepy. So the one Muppet stage show that we originally got was called Meet the Muppets, and there was another one called Muppets on Location, Days of Swine and Roses, and you said that there was another one, right, that was called Here Come the Muppets?
Here Come the Muppets, yeah.
Oh, gosh, these are creepy, and there's something about full-body Muppets that's just, like, not right.
Yeah. And all of these shows, I mean, they were all such short runs. Like, it was clear that they weren't really getting the formula right.
Well, so if you haven't looked this up on YouTube or lived through it, basically it was a stage show housed in the building where Voyage of the Little Mermaid was, and also there was one outside of the exit of Muppet Vision 3D as well. That was where Muppets on Location was. Now, these were full body character costume Muppets, which is weird because there are some of those. But then when you see Kermit and Miss Piggy and Fozzie, like, life-sized, I feel like that's just so unsettling. And the one thing, because I did find a video of the first iteration, which I think was Meet the Muppets. And what's very weird about that one is that half of the show uses a video screen where the Muppets are the actual puppets, and they're talking through this video phone to Kermit, who is on stage in full body in costume. But then when they eventually come out on the stage, they're full body costume puppets. So it was just very weird. There was one part, though, that I do have to say made me laugh a little bit, where Kermit calls Fozzie and he's like, "Where are you? Why aren't you at the show?" And Fozzie says, "I'm lost." And you can see like the background and everything because he's on the phone. And as Kermit's talking to him, he says, "Oh, there's a door over here. I'm going to go through the door." And in typical Muppet fashion, Fozzie opens the door and walks out on stage. But yeah, like things like that, like there were jokes in there that worked for them pretty well. But I think just the combination of how the suits were designed is what really did these shows in. Yeah. I think if the Muppets did them like how Disney Junior Live on Stage ended up being, that would be pretty cool. But I don't think we'll ever see that. If you haven't done Disney Junior Live on Stage, the floor panels move and there's actual puppets that come out.
I was just about to ask. I was like, have you guys done that? Because I haven't.
I've seen videos of it. I haven't actually done it. But let me see if I can find a picture for you. So there's actual human actors in the show as well as the puppets. But the way that the puppets come up through the floor, and they actually looked like Muppets. So the next phase of the Muppets Movie Land, Muppet Studios themed area was going to feature a pizza parlor called the Great Gonzo's Pandemonium Pizza Parlor and the Great Muppet Movie Ride, which is the
Saddest thing that never happened.
Yes, this is the most devastating thing that I have ever heard of being chopped from a Disney park. We're going to go into depth about them later, but I wanted to kind of touch base on them and say, like, these are projects that were going to happen. But unfortunately, the reason we didn't get the second phase is because before this whole land could open, Jim Henson passed away, and there was some issues with this. Since technically Disney wasn't in a contract with the Henson family to use the Muppets in the parks, the rights fell back to the Henson family, and eventually they kind of fought to have all of the Muppets projects in the Disney park shut down, including Muppet Vision and including these stage shows as well. So initially, we probably wouldn't have gotten Muppet Vision if it weren't for Frank Oz, who, if you don't know, is Miss Piggy, Fozzie, I think Gonzo. He did a lot of the major Muppets, and was basically Jim Henson's right-hand man. He pleaded to the Henson family that they needed to show Jim's final film or final work, and they were going to kind of pull this out. So he really begged them to, like, push this project in and let them complete it. So the Henson family agreed to do this one thing and let Muppet Vision show only at Walt Disney World. Eventually it did come to California Adventure, but that needed to be separately licensed. I don't want anyone to, like, pause this podcast and be like, no, it wasn't California Adventure. But yeah, when it first came out, the initial agreement was Disney could only show it at Walt Disney World, and that was the only place that they would show Muppet Vision 3D. Which, that's, like, so disheartening. When I was reading this, I was like, that's so sad that they were going to, like, pull this project and never let it see the light of day just because they wanted to maintain the integrity of the Muppets.
But see, that's the thing, is, like, I feel like Muppet Vision 3D is, like, such a great representation of the Muppets.
It really is.
The humor that they use, it's just classic Muppets. So I can understand, a lot of stuff's going on, and with Jim Henson's passing, it was a weird time, I'm sure, to be negotiating this kind of stuff, but I really do. I think it is just, it's great, and definitely in what I think he would have wanted.
And that's the funny thing. Like, I was doing a lot of research on all this, and it's weird to look at it from the perspective of the other side. Like, we love Muppet Vision, we love the Muppets. And not seeing Muppet Vision see the light of day would have been one of the biggest travesties of all Disney parks, I think. But if you look at the history of the Muppets and the Henson family after Jim Henson died, it's so weird what they did with them, because they really wanted to maintain the integrity of their father's work, and they really wanted to make sure that they stayed the Muppets that everyone knew and loved. But in doing that, they kind of stopped everything and, like, put the world on hold for the Muppets. And they pulled the contract from Disney. They didn't want anything to do with that. And then they eventually sold them to another media company that did nothing with them for years.
Sad.
Yeah. That's the weirdest thing. If you look at how Disney acquired the Muppets, it's so strange, because they were in talks with Jim. It was going to happen, and then it didn't happen because he died, and then the family took the rights. They held on to them for a while. They sold them to a German media company who didn't use them for enough time, and then the Henson family eventually bought them back, and then Disney bought them back from the Henson family. But before all that happened, Disney was trying to buy them from the German media company, and that didn't happen. So it's crazy to look into that.
And it really makes you wonder, if Disney hadn't eventually acquired it, like, if the franchise would even really be around anymore.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, a lot of people say that Disney kind of has given up on the Muppets at this point. I don't think that's the case. I just think they haven't found the perfect medium for them yet.
I agree with that.
But let's talk a little bit about these canceled projects, because I know we're all excited about this. So the first one that I want to talk about The Great Gonzo's Pizza Pandemonium Parlor, which, for better or worse, we saw some of these ideas come to reality through Pizza Rizzo. initially the restaurant was going to be themed like Planet Hollywood or a Hard Rock Cafe, where it was going to have a whole bunch of Muppets memorabilia throughout the restaurant. We were going to see things like props from the Muppet shows, different things from the movies that they were in, and that in itself would make an awesome restaurant. But to make things even better, they were going to fill things with different antics, from the Swedish chef being the cook in the kitchen, and you would actually get to watch him live cooking your meals in front of you. And of course, things would be going wrong, like the food would fight back. There was even talks of like him getting into a war with a tomato carrying a knife, or a lump of pizza springing to life and attacking him. And there was also points that the doors to the restaurant would just randomly explode with smoke and shoot chicken feathers out. So all of that combined would have just made for so much awesome atmosphere that would have been true to the Muppets. But the thing that I think is the absolute best part that was such a missed opportunity with Pizza Rizzo is how your food would be delivered to you. And if you haven't read anything about this, the wait staff would be animatronic rats that would run on a railroad system that would carry the food directly from the kitchen to your table, drop it off, and then go back.
I've heard this, and it sounds like such a cool concept, but I see this being so difficult to implement.
It sounds like a logistical nightmare, but I want it so bad.
Mm-hmm. Well, I've seen videos online of the like sushi restaurants in Japan that have the conveyor belt system that go around all the tables. So, I mean, I'm sure it's possible, but I don't know. It's one of those things, like I wouldn't trust like an open conveyor belt system, like some kid somewhere, upstream hadn't like stuck his hands in the food or something.
Yeah, and apparently it was supposed to run like that. Like it was an actual model train system that they were talking about, that they would just kind of change the cars on. Instead of being trains, there would be flat cars and the rats would be attached to them. But like you said, I don't know if I would trust it to be not soiled by other guests. But the biggest missed opportunity of all Disney parks, and the one thing that if I could turn time back and just convince someone to do anything Disney parks related, I think it would be this. The Great Muppet Movie Ride. So obviously when MGM opened, it was just 2 attractions, one of them being the Great Movie Ride. And the original concept for this attraction was to mirror the Great Movie Ride, but different show scenes from classical movies would be implemented in here. However, the difference is that this would feature the Muppets, and things would be going only the way that you would expect them to be with the Muppets, where they would be going classically wrong. I did a lot of digging on this one, and I found a lot of show scenes for here, which just reading them made me laugh. Like, I really wish that we could have seen this in some way.
I know, just hearing the stories about it, like, I am completely confident that this would be in my at least top 5 favorite attractions at Disney if this would have come to fruition.
There's a really cool interview. If you look it up, I put it in our show notes. I'll try to put it in the actual podcast show notes. It's Jim Henson actually talking about this attraction, and just the way that he talks about it in this like 10-minute clip has me in full confidence that this would have been like probably top 5 Disney for me. But
I'll check that out.
Yeah, it's really cool. And one of the things that I really admire about Jim Henson is whenever you hear an interview with him or you see him talk about something that is like a passion project for him, you can really hear it in the way that he talks about it. Like, there are a lot of people that you can go back and listen to interviews and stuff like that for, and you can tell that they're doing it and maybe they're a little bit excited about it, but when someone talks about something they're really passionate about and their eyes just light up or they're really into it, you can tell. And every interview I've seen with him has been just that. So I want to go over some of these scenes because I think if our listeners haven't heard about this, they're going to want to know. So a couple things that were storyboarded for this attraction that were supposed to be put in place was a Muppets version of Frankenstein that would be directed by Gonzo, and Fozzie would be overseeing special effects. Miss Piggy and Kermit were supposed to stumble into the mad scientist lair of Dr. Bunsen Honeydew, and on the operating table would be a 10-foot tall beaker waiting to be brought to life. There's concept art of this one, and I think this is one of the ones that like is most famous for this attraction. There was also supposed to be a segment from the Pigs in Space section of the Muppet television show. Basically, the crew of the USS Swine Trek are in the middle of a battle with the pirates, who are basically just Rizzo and his family dressed as pirates. And it would be like a laser standoff battle between the two of them that you would be riding through. And then the final one that I found would be a Peter Pan parody with Kermit as Peter Pan teaching the Darling Children how to fly. The Darling Children would be Janice as Wendy, Scooter as John, and Fozzie Bear as Michael, holding a teddy bear and wearing footy pajamas.
Oh my God.
The best part of this is that the technicians operating the pulleys and rigs and things to make them fly would be Rizzo and his family, which are severely different in size from all of those characters. Now, there would also be things going wrong there as well, as you'd expect. But alongside of that, in opposition to the rats doing the pulley system, Miss Piggy would be dressed as Tinkerbell. And there would be lots of large holes in the scenery from all the mishaps that had happened with them. So big that Sweetums would actually have to be brought in to help control her through the final moments of this scene.
And
What could have been?
Yeah, and of course the one thing that you would expect would be that Statler and Waldorf would be riding in a studio golf cart alongside of you at different scenes. They would just kind of pop up on the track as well and make their comments. I just really wish that this attraction could have happened.
Yep.
So, despite all that, they do have a couple iterations in the park now that we can talk about, unless you guys want to go back and talk about some of this stuff. I know I kind of like breezed through it. If you guys have any comments you want to make on that.
I'm just, it's not just that, like the movie ride would have obviously been great, but just that if Disney would have dedicated a whole section of Hollywood Studios for this, I would have really loved to see, how well all that theming in the whole area tied together. Because, now, even though you've got, they call it Muppets Courtyard, but I don't feel like it's very well themed, it's kind of just thrown together. And for them to have a section of the park with multiple attractions, multiple restaurants, and, even possibility of a parade, like all tying stuff together, I would have absolutely loved to see that.
And the crazy thing about all this is that this was the first planned expansion for Hollywood Studios. So, like, you kind of have to wonder how big would this have ended up being if Jim Henson had actually, like, lived through it.
Right.
And if he was able to see all of this through the final stages of planning, like, what else could they have done? This was only phase 2 of the actual, like, installments in the park. It's crazy that this is stuff that could have been.
Yep.
It also makes you wonder what would be in Hollywood Studios now if they were still a part of it.
That's a good question. Yeah.
Oh, so I guess we can talk about the other projects that they have that are currently in the parks right now. The first one we can talk about that I have on here is Muppets Mobile Lab, which, have you guys seen this?
I have.
Okay, I think it's awesome. For those of you that don't know, it's part of the Living Character Initiative. Basically, Disney did this thing a while back where they tried to make more lifelike walk-around animatronics and things like that in the parks. One of the biggest ones that we had for the longest time was Push, and I guess now I think he's called ICANN. And then
I think he's done too.
I think so. But then there was also Lucky the dinosaur that was in Animal Kingdom.
Man, I would have loved to have seen that.
Just seeing those videos of that is really, really cool.
You know which one I find really fascinating? the animatronic Remy that was in France for a while, and the Wally animatronic. Both of those are really cool.
I don't know if I've seen either one of those.
Me either.
So, really cool little mini tangent. Apparently, back when the Living Character Initiative was a really big thing, they added an animatronic Remy that would bring out your food with the cast member delivering your food at the France restaurant. Can't remember which one it was. So they would lift up the little silver platter, and there would be Remy inside that would be kind of like a little puppet that the cast member would control. Unfortunately, that restaurant is very fancy, and they had to remove it for complications and because of the fact that people probably don't want their food delivered by a rat. But then the Wally, I know, did a lot of stuff at D23, and that thing is like lifelike. You can look at that and be like, no, that is not a robot. That is like Wally straight from the movie.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I love Wally. I wish I had seen that.
But yeah, Muppets Mobile Lab features Dr. Bunsen, Honeydew, and Beaker in, I can't remember what it's called now, and I probably should have put this in the show notes, but it's kind of like a little rocket ship. I think it's actually called the Muppets Mobile Lab. But they ride around through Epcot, and they have 53 scripted comedy bits and routines that they can go through with the guests in the park and interact with them in a way that only this Living Character Initiative can do. I really wish that Disney would have actually stuck with this project, though.
I know, and like, you know, that thing's sitting in a room somewhere. You know what? They need to bring it back out.
I think it does still come out.
Yeah, I've seen it pretty recently.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, definitely within the last year or two.
I know they did it, like Muppets Mobile Lab was a big thing in California when it first came out, because it was in California Adventure, and then they moved it over here, like right before they retired it, and then when they brought it back a couple years ago. I think it was actually around like at least a year or two ago, because it was when we were first starting this podcast, because I remember going down there in October and being like, I really hope I see this, and I think maybe I saw like the very end of it. But all of these Living Character things, they just need to do something with them.
Mm-hmm.
But then outside of that, we also have the Muppets Present Great Moments in American History in Magic Kingdom, which I, for one, am super thrilled about. I love that they decided to put the Muppets here. If you haven't seen it, it's very easy to miss this one, I think. But the Muppets pop out over, it's next to Hall of Presidents. I can't remember what building that is, though. But they pop...
It's above the ticket office.
Yeah.
So they pop out from the windows and do a little show about the Declaration of Independence and the Midnight Ride of Paul Revere, told through those characters, with each one playing a different part. And as you can expect, as I've said a million times, things go wrong in only a way that they can with the Muppets. So I love this. Like, there's nothing else I could say besides I love this.
It is absolutely fantastic. I remember hearing when this was first announced and just thinking like, oh God, please be good, please be good, please be good. And seeing it for the first time, I love it.
Yeah, it's a great show. And like you said, it is very easy to miss. Like, a crowd will just start forming randomly and then it starts. Like, I feel like I don't know. It's not as well advertised as I'd like it to be.
Well, they have the show times are posted in the maps, if I remember correctly. But when they don't tell you which show is playing, you kind of have to ask the cast member, and they can usually tell you which one's going to be going on. And it's in such a, like, I think this is the only place they could have done it in this way, but the fact that it's up and not directly in front of you just makes it so much harder for guests to just, look, or easier for guests to look right at.
Right, and especially, I mean, it's not like, or what looks like a dedicated show building for an attraction or even a show. So people that don't know it's there, that aren't looking for it, it's going to be kind of hard to find.
So I got a couple fun facts on this one that I found while researching. Apparently, the show is in development for 2 years. It started in spring of 2014 following The Muppets Most Wanted. And originally, it was just going to feature Sam Eagle telling guests about American history, which probably wouldn't be that entertaining. As much as I love Sam Eagle, I don't think that would have worked out very well. But then they added Kermit, Miss Piggy, Fozzie, and Gonzo, along with for one of the shows, a live actor that would play a part in the Jim Lewis, who also helped write a lot of some of the later Muppet stuff, was also asked to write the script for it. So they brought someone in from the Henson Company to kind of work with them to refine what they wanted for this show. And then the last fun fact that I have is, due to the distance between the guest and the Muppet characters, each one of the Muppets are about 5% larger than they actually would be on like a television or film set. So I have to imagine that these puppets are like way bigger than I want them to be. But yeah, I think this is like a great addition to the parks for the Muppets.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
So there's two things I wanted to talk. Well, the last thing I wanted to talk about was the special, The Muppets in Walt Disney World. I know I sent this to you guys through the group chat. You can kind of find it online. I'm not going to say where because you probably shouldn't. I think it's copyrighted. But to promo some of the stuff that was coming to Walt Disney World and MGM, the Muppets did a special called The Muppets at Walt Disney World. Did you guys get a chance to sit down and watch this?
I did not.
I'm about halfway through it.
It's a little bit dated. There's some stuff in there that's like, you could tell when it was filmed and that the only three parks that were open were Magic Kingdom, Epcot, and or MGM at the time. And it suffers from, and I said this in our group chat, but it suffers from that one thing that all sitcoms and TV specials suffer from when it comes to Walt Disney World, and that is thinking that all of the parks are within the same gate and proximity of walking distance.
I know, like, I've gotten to the part where they go in through what is very obviously the MGM gates, and then half of them are in front of Spaceship Earth like 5 minutes later.
And Miss Piggy's in Magic Kingdom.
If only.
Yeah.
But the best... Yeah, that would be fantastic. But the best part of this special, I think, is the opening, where Michael Eisner is sitting down with Fozzie and his mother, and they're talking about the special, kind of similar to the way that they would introduce like the Wonderful World of Disney specials. And Jim Henson had his own version of that called, I think it was like the Jim Henson Show or something similar, where he would kind of do his puppet installation of like, this is what's going on in the world of the Muppets this week. But they kind of sit down and they do the introduction similarly to how both of those shows would do it. Now, I've heard this story a couple times from a couple different places, a couple different interviews and things I've read online throughout my research. But apparently Michael Eisner is a horrible actor. And apparently he like very much insisted on doing this special. And really, he's only got a few lines in this opening bit. Like, if you watch it, I think he says like, "Hello, I'm Michael Eisner, and I'm joined by such and such, the Muppets, whatever." But he apparently could not get his lines right to save his life. And it took them multiple takes to get through this. And there's one take online that I've seen through like a blooper reel. And if you ever get the chance to sit down and just watch Muppet bloopers, they're pretty funny in a way that you wouldn't expect them to be. But he says something along the lines, and you can tell this is like his 50th take, and he's starting to get frustrated. And Fozzie looks at the camera and goes, "Can we get the next actor in here?"
I've seen that. It is really, really good.
And the special itself is, I mean, like I said, it's kind of dated, and you can kind of see some stuff that the actual Disney fan in me kind of cringed at. But it's really cool. Essentially, the plot is that the Muppets are visiting Kermit's family at the swamp for their annual cookout, and they find out that the swamp is right in front of the Magic Kingdom, but it's hidden behind a bunch of trees, and they didn't see it when they were coming in. So instead of hanging out for the annual cook-off thing that's going on at Kermit's Swamp, all of the Muppets decide they want to go to the Magic Kingdom and go visit Disney World. So they sneak in through the front gate past the security guard, who is apparently on his last chance at actually being a security guard. And hilarity ensues as the Muppets try to ride different attractions and sneak through security, and Gonzo gets through the utilidors somehow, and all this other weird stuff happens. But in the end, they're brought to meet Mickey Mouse and basically are welcomed back into the park. It's a really kind of a sweet special, especially if you like the Muppets and you want to see them with Mickey in this weird, like, cartoon drawn segment where the Muppets are just standing in front of a door that's obviously green screened in. But it's pretty good. And then the one thing that's really touching about this is one of the last specials that Jim Henson worked on himself. He would actually die 10 days following the airing of the special. So really nice to see one of his last works. And it also has a young Raven Simone in it, which is interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's what I've got for the history of the Muppets in the Walt Disney Parks. I posted a question online that we can go through that instead of listener response because we didn't really get a lot. But if you guys have anything you want to talk about, we can do that really quick.
What's your favorite Muppet song?
Oh, okay. That's an easy one. Rainbow Connection always gets me every time. Like, I'm gonna be a sap right now and be like really sentimental about this, but 2 weeks ago when I was out, I got my wisdom teeth taken out, and I literally just was in and out of consciousness because I was just so tired all the time. So I was like, let me just put on the Muppets movie, or like put on something I've seen a couple times, so if I fall asleep, it's not really like a big deal.
That's my entire life. Let me put something on. If I fall asleep, it's not a big deal.
Well, and that was what I was like, because I didn't want to start watching something. Like, I had a list of things I wanted to watch, and then I was like, you know what? I'm going to fall asleep through all of this. Let me just like lay down and just, if I fall asleep, I fall asleep. I put on the 2011 Muppets movie, the one with Jason Segel in it, and the part when they're doing the telethon and all of the Muppets sing the Rainbow Connection, like, it didn't hit me when Kermit started to sing it. It didn't hit me when Miss Piggy joined in. But when they all walked out on stage, I started crying. And I was like, oh no.
It's all good, man. There is so much about that movie that is like super, super emotional. And I was going to say, like, my favorite one is Pictures in My Head from kind of more the beginning of that one. Like, that one hits me pretty good.
That one was really good too. I really do love this soundtrack and like all of that movie.
Because didn't Man or Muppet get nominated at least for an Oscar that year for
I think it did.
Original song in a motion picture, I think.
I think it did. And I wouldn't be surprised because the Muppets have been nominated for a lot of Oscars or like different awards and things like that. Man or Muppet won the Academy Award for Best Original Song at the 84th Academy Awards.
Oh, so it did win. Wow, how about that?
Also nominated for Best Song Written for Visual Media at the 55th Grammys, Best Original Song at the Satellite Awards, and Best Song at the 17th Critics' Choice Award.
Nice.
In which two other songs from the film, Life's a Happy Song and Pictures in My Head, were also nominated. So... And the thing that kills me about that movie, like, I love the 2011 Muppets movie, but it was so good, and we were riding the wave of like the second revival of Muppets Mania, and then Muppets Most Wanted came out.
Yeah. I didn't think it was terrible, but it certainly wasn't as good as the 2011 movie.
I read a thing while I was doing some research about this, because I watched that one too, and I was like, it's not that bad. I don't know why I hated it that much. And then I read this article that was like, the problem with this movie is that it focuses too much on the guest stars and not enough on the Muppets. And I went, that's exactly it.
I completely agree with that. And because it had a lot of, like, I think bigger people in it, you know, like Ricky Gervais and Tina Fey. And even though the 2011 one had pretty big one, like even Jason Segel being like the main character of it, didn't really involve the plot that much.
Yeah.
I gotta say, I need to get busy listening to more Muppet songs because I definitely don't know a ton of them. But just for funsies, I was looking at like Wikipedia Muppet songs category, whatever, and it's Not Easy Being Grand song.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this just is like a weird, I don't know, putting things into perspective. Is that obviously, like, it was originally like sung by Kermit the Frog, but it was like later covered by Frank Sinatra, and I just feel like that's really strange. Like, it doesn't feel like, I feel like Frank Sinatra is like a different time period.
Yeah.
But isn't that like weird?
It is pretty weird.
Well, I will say, if you feel that that's weird, you should go back and watch the original Muppet Show, because I had this conversation with my mom earlier. We were talking about the Muppets, and I was telling her that we were going to do this, and I was like, I watched a lot of the older Muppet Show kind of in prep for all of this, and one of the things that I don't remember actually, like, not connecting with is some of the guest stars on the original Muppet Show, and I think the first, like, season and maybe some of the second, like, the half of the second season, suffer from this too. A lot of those guest stars are older and like either no longer famous or like no longer relevant to my life. So maybe we didn't quite connect with that, but I think at the time maybe it made sense somewhere along the lines.
Oh, I mean, like, Frank Sinatra is always relevant.
Wow.
But I just think it's weird that it feels like he's from a different time, like he's from a different era in my mind. And yet he still like was as recently enough to have covered a Muppet song.
Yeah, but that also was in,
I don't know.
I can't remember when that actually came out, but I want to say that was like
OG Muppets.
Yeah, that's
1970 according to the
that probably makes a lot more sense.
Wikipedia article.
Also, if you ever look up, I know this site is like, this is really not relevant anymore, but if you look up the Muppets music and end up on Last FM, the genre tags for the Muppets are very interesting. Apparently the Muppets are post-rock, jazz, Spain, frogcore, Kermit rock, Muppet core.
Frogcore, Muppet core, I love it.
I remember it was actually posted on Reddit one time just under our music, and they always post whatever genre it is, and they get really creative sometimes, and it's like Pump the Brakes, it's like that's not really a genre of music, it's like one song that fits in there. But I wanted to say that they had it was like swamp frog folk or something, just ridiculous.
I posted this question to Reddit and Twitter and Facebook about us doing this episode, and I wanted to ask some people where they would put Muppets in the park if they happened to have the chance to design something for Disney. Surprisingly, a lot of people wanted Rock and Roller Coaster rethemed to the Muppets, but I got like 3 different responses on how they would do it. So I just kind of want to go through some of these because I think they were pretty interesting. First one was, and I'm gonna let you guys guess to see if you can see where I thought this one was going. It says a dark ride where you're recruited by Scooter to help one of the Muppets get to the Muppets Theater in time for the Muppet Show. Shenanigans would ensue, including songs, jokes, and familiar Muppets characters being present throughout. At the end of the ride, you would have successfully made it to the Muppets Theater and the show starting just in time. And you're listening to a bunch of different songs, and the ride animatronics would all be Muppets doing their part, and then you would be escorted into a quick service restaurant run by the Swedish chef. The first half of that reminded me of an attraction that we've talked about a couple times on here, so I want to see if you guys are thinking where I was going with that. Man, I'm surprised you didn't think of it right away. That's alarming.
Was this a good ride or a bad ride?
No, bad ride.
Is it Superstar Limo?
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking too.
When this was posted by this Reddit user, I commented back. It was like immediately, this sounds like Superstar Limo, and they were like, I was afraid of that.
This sounds like a significantly better version of Superstar Limo.
Oh yeah, for sure. So we got another one that was rethemed Rock and Roller Coaster with the Muppets. Basically, just put on a Muppet-style rock concert throughout the ride. The video would just be like leading up to the coaster, kind of probably similar to how Aerosmith does it now, I would guess. And then there would just be different Muppet rock covers, and it would be kind of similar to how they do it now, but also different songs per ride, like Guardians of the Galaxy was what they said. Random Muppets quotes, noises, appearances throughout the ride. We also got a response about that too from Chant, who said that he would retheme Rock and Roller Coaster, but the idea would be that Gonzo's messed with Professor Honeydew's new propulsion system that's meant to be for the Walt Disney World Railroad. It'll get you to Main Street to Fantasyland before you can say it's a great, big, beautiful tomorrow. That was clever. I just now realized what
Nice.
what he was saying there. And the guests are the first to try it out. And the ride would also run to the tune of Moving Right Along, which I really liked that.
Oh, that's perfect.
I also had one that I guess I didn't put in here that basically just said do an overlay with Electric Mayhem, which that would be probably the easiest thing that Disney could ever do.
Yeah.
Gosh, there's so many good ones. I feel like this was easy for people. We had someone that said that they wanted them as a cameo in Splash Mountain during the Zippity Doodah scene, which that would be interesting. That'd be pretty cool to see. Someone also said put them in the bathrooms. Awkward but fun.
Not sure what exactly that means, but all right.
I'm not sure what that meant either, but figured I'd throw that in there. We also had, let me see, Muppets ride similar to the Ratatouille trackless system ride vehicles. It would be a journey through the many Muppets adventures and wacky mishaps, but as each car moves independently, riders would have a varying experience based on the ride path, which would randomize each time. This would make the ride new and unexpected each time, as you may not necessarily see the same items or take the same route through the attraction. That's really cool.
I would love to see something like that in multiple different attractions.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
It kind of sounds like the Great Muppets movie ride, though. Because,
which I'm perfectly okay with.
Yeah, I mean, I would be perfectly okay with that too. But that was where my mind went with that. But anyway, the last response that we had would be a Muppets Omnimover through Muppet Studio, or some wacky original story. Making the Muppets animatronics would be pretty easy, and they would get some realistic motions with the characters. Basically, they would also want to see the tram ride resurrected from Hollywood Studios that would feature a animatronic Gonzo or Kermit driving the tram as mayhem ensues.
I love that.
That's good.
I still miss the backlot tour.
I knew that you would be all about that one. As soon as I saw that, I was like, this one's going in here. Beth's gonna love this.
Oh my gosh. I really legit miss that ride so much. Like, I don't know why I was so obsessed with it, but it was just so cool. R.I.P. Catastrophe Canyon.
So did you guys have anything Muppets related you wanted to talk about this week before we tie this show up?
I have homework for everyone. If you haven't already, go on YouTube and watch the epic rap battle of history with Stan Lee versus Jim Henson, because it is extremely relevant to this podcast episode.
Also, if you're on YouTube, you should watch the Muppets cover of Bohemian Rhapsody.
Oh, that is so good. The part where Animal comes in is the best.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I am definitely going to watch that.
Part.
That has to be the best way of like editing something out in a song ever.
Yeah. That was like, and the best part about that is that that's so Animal. Mm-hmm. Their YouTube channel's like great. I mean, it's not as active as it used to be, but they were posting like little segment sketches for a while, and that was pretty cool. Disney just needs to do something again with the Muppets. That's my takeaway from all this.
Mm-hmm.
Then that's going to do it for us this week. Thanks for joining us again on another episode of the Station 71 podcast. If you like what you heard, be sure to subscribe to us on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts from. If you want to keep in touch with us, you can find us online at facebook.com/Station71pod, Twitter at Station71pod, Instagram at Station71podcast, and you can send us a listener email to station71podcast@gmail.com or call us on our brand new Google Voice line at 561-899-6441. We hope you enjoyed your ride, and we'll see you real soon.
stand clear of the doors. Por favor, manténganse alejado de las puertas.